The authorities have kept the man in prison for 15 years without charging him. Where is my Koran? Where are my things? Listen up. The film, based on a true story, begins in November 2001, 2 months after the September 11 terrorist attack. One of the characters in this drama, the titular Mauritanian Mohamed Ould Slahi, is hanging out at a relative's wedding. He is taken away from the event by law enforcement officials to be handed over to the American authorities. They got a little nervous after the recent events. Changing clothes, Mohamed quietly deletes all contacts from his phone, and then sits as an escort in the car. He sees his worried mother in the back window, seeing him off with a glance. He has no idea that this is the last time he will see her. The action shifts to Albuquerque in 2005. Here another heroine of the stories works as a lawyer, Nancy Holland, who can make even silent lambs talk. A colleague asks her to use her personal connections to find out if Mohamed Ould Slahi is being held in Guantanamo Bay. His relatives have not heard from him since November 200. He is allegedly accused of masterminding the 9/11 attacks, but the authorities say nothing officially. Hollander at first refuses to get involved in a surefire losing case to protect the terrorist, but changes her mind after all. She calls representatives of Guantanamo, but no one confirms information about Mohamed. The woman needs an interpreter to take on the case, and that's Terry. A trainee with looks that don't fit in anywhere with the agent. Meanwhile, the story shifts to military prosecutor Stu Couch. He is asked to become a state prosecutor in the Ould Slahi case and get him the death penalty. To motivate the lawyer even more, he is told that it was hearsay that recruited the men who sent the planes into the World Trade Center towers. Remembering that his friend Lt. Col. died in one of them, Couch agrees. Hollander and his assistant arrive in Cuba, where the Guantanamo Bay prison, far from American jurisdiction, is located. Here they meet Mohamed for the first time. The lawyers convince him that they are not there to interrogate him, but to help him, among other things, gather material to prove the illegality of his detention. This requires that the detainee sign a document agreeing to appoint a woman as his representative. Mohamed says he has never been charged with anything. Even though he cooperates with the administration, he continues to be held and interrogated for several years, 18 hours a day. Hollander asks the man to write down his statement and send it in a confidential letter. When the lawyers leave, Mohamed asks for one last phone call to his mother. He writes down the number on the contract form. But all the documents are taken by the guards on the way out. They are first checked by the censorship service to make sure no state secrets are inadvertently leaked. Nevertheless, Terry remembers the number by heart and, when he returns to the States, calls Mohamed's family and tells them of his fate. The attorneys then go to the Federal Secret Archives, where they gain access to Slahi's case files. But not all of them, only those approved by the censors. Prosecutor Couch, meanwhile, assembles a team to similarly review the materials. Though he has served as the high wizard of the land, it takes such strong sorcery as irrefutable evidence against the legal bureaucracy. His job is to prove that Mohamed is the very same Al-Qaeda recruiter. In addition, he informs the widow of his dead friend that he is handling the case of the perpetrator of his death. Meanwhile, the Mauritanian tells his story in a letter. He plunges into the flashback of Becky being transported through various prisons with the accompanying trampling of human honor and dignity, and being put into solitary confinement at Guantanamo Bay, where he is given a serial number instead of a name. Soon the hero begins to be interrogated by 2 CIA officers with an interpreter. But Mohamed has nothing to say. He denies being a terrorist recruiter. Nevertheless, they treat him more or less well, even take him out for a walk in the green tarpaulin-covered courtyard. There, Mohamed meets another prisoner, whom he names Marcel after the city he is from. After receiving the letter, Hollander turns to a colleague to find out about this very Marcel, a French citizen. The authorities continue to deny his existence, but the lawyer needs testimony that will confirm Mohamed's words. In the meantime, Lt. Col. Coach learns that a lawyer has taken on the defense of his accused. The very same Hollander. The prosecutor turns to Neil, the man who once supervised the interrogation of the prisoner. He wants reports on these interrogations, so-called memos. Mohamed sends Hollander another letter, which is inspected by a government censor. Inspecting any classified information. In the text, he recounts the ongoing interrogations of 2002, during which he was persuaded to plead guilty, to fudge the facts as if he were unequivocally guilty. But Mohamed continues to insist that he is innocent, and an accidental encounter with terrorists is common in countries with an advanced kinship system. The man also recalls conversations with Marcel in his childhood, when he had just learned that he had won a training grant and could go to Germany. The whole family cheers for him to go. In October 2005, the lawyers get access to the case file. They are given many boxes of reports that must be studied. The task is made extremely difficult by the fact that almost everything in them is blacked out for the sake of secrecy. Hollander has to complain to the government. A rival in the person of Lieutenant Colonel Couch, meanwhile, has almost complete access to all the information. But even so, he cannot fully prove his guilt. The memos are needed to complete the picture. To accomplish this, Couch goes to visit Buckland, but he insists he cannot hand over the classified data. Hollander and Terry visit Muhammad in prison again. An aide tells the prisoner about his family's affairs, but immediately spills the beans that in addition to his lawyers, a censorship agent has read his letters. This does not please the man. He thought the information was confidential and now does not want to continue sharing the testimony. On the way back to the airport, Hollander notes Couch, invites the lawyer over for a drink and a chat. Already on the plane, the lawyer decides that they need to change tactics or they will lose in court. Couch, after inspecting the conditions of the detainees, goes to speak with the Guantanamo Bay governor. The prosecutor notes that the guards are not using humane ways of dealing with the prisoners. He fears that evidence of coercion and torture could surface in the case, legally jeopardizing the situation. Even so, the director refuses to allow access to the memos. Muhammad continues to record his testimony. He recalls learning English in prison so he could communicate freely without an interpreter. Marcel, on his walk, recommends that he learn the language not only through communication with the guards, but also through books. In the pages of the classics, the verbiage is wordy and beautiful to the point of exploration. In addition, he recalls his wife's life in Germany and his decision to volunteer in Afghanistan to fight against the Soviet army. Under interrogation, he is called a terrorist, but Muhammad explains that Muslims have fought alongside Americans in Afghanistan. Later, he speaks to Marcel, who says goodbye to the hero, after which he is taken away. Muhammad observes this through a small gap. His lawyer obtains information that no Marcel was in Guantanamo, and the hero himself learns from the guard that he strangled himself in his cell, having lost all hope of being released. A journalist visits Hollander to ask if she is ashamed to defend a terrorist responsible for terrorist attacks. But she reminds him that there was not only no trial, but even a trivial accusation against him. The coach sees the article in the newspaper, but does not gloat. He has enough problems of his own. In particular, the assistant requesting information is removed from the case by his superiors. Hollander and Terry go to the Muhammad hearing. In front of the courthouse, they run into a rally. The protesters push the assistant. At the hearing, the judge agrees that in 6 years, the government could have indicted the prisoner. But since they haven't, they are obligated to give the materials to the defense. The attorneys receive more boxes with the reports unstained by the paint. Terry finds Muhammad's handwritten confession. He confesses to everything he is accused of. A frustrated assistant leaves, not wanting to pursue the case any further. Not giving up on her client, Hollander visits him in prison, and the man confesses that a confession was beaten out of him by force. The woman then asks him to put his version of events on paper, but he refuses. Hollander then leaves, promising to find him another lawyer. Lieutenant Colonel Couch once again visits Buckland to persuade him to give him access to the memos. Without them, the prosecutor can't make up his tactics in court. Buckland recalls how Muhammad stopped being interrogated by the civilians and put in the hands of more sophisticated negotiators, among whom was himself. The recollection and the altercation have an effect on Buckland's conscience, and he soon allows Coach to see the memos in a special room. Concurrently, Hollander receives a letter from Muhammad and the opposing parties scrutinize the same case from different angles. The hero recalls a lot of torture, being subjected to stressful situations, not allowed to sleep, tortured with hunger, cold, water, beatings and sexual violence. Muhammad begins to hallucinate, but even so he doesn't break down. Eventually the interrogation manager threatens to bring his mother in and put her next to the prisoners, who are sure to rape her. In September 2003, Muhammad Old Slahi decides to confess to everything he is accused of, just to stop the torture and to keep his threatened relatives safe. Hollander and Couch realizes that with the evidence they have discovered, Muhammad's confession is null and void, which means there is no evidence of guilt against him. The prosecutor tells the chief that there is nothing he can do. Torture is approved by the Department of Defense, and the testimony thus obtained is invalid. The coach has to recuse himself from the case. It is even reported in the newspaper. After informing Muhammad that his case has moved on, Hollander meets Coach's former opponent in a bar. They discuss the situation with the prisoner. The lawyer believes that Guantanamo is located in Cuba so that the prisoners cannot be legally prosecuted, for the island does not fall under U.S. jurisdiction. Later, Terry reports that she was able to identify Marcel, and she then returns to work on Muhammad's case. On December 14, 2009, a hearing is held. Muhammad, as the plaintiff, appears on it via video link, not forgetting to express in an agitated way an ode to the rule of law in that country. The government that has illegally held him for 8 years. Hero recites a heartfelt speech. It made the icy heart of the lawman shake, although it is possible that the evidence gathered is to blame. On March 22, 2010, Muhammad receives notice that he has won a lawsuit against the U.S. government. Proud of his will and resilience, he continues to be held at Guantanamo Bay. He stayed locked up for another 7 years because the president's administration appealed. Muhammad never saw his mother. She died in 2013. In 2015, his memoir, titled Guantanamo Bay Diaries, came out of print. Its pages, like the accounts of his case, were also censored by the Defense Department, but that didn't stop it from becoming a bestseller. The film ends with a scene in which Muhammad Ould Slahi is led out into the open, wearing impenetrable glasses and headphones to disorient him. After that come archival footage of the real Muhammad returning home to Mauritania. And then there are the credits with an informative summary of the character's fate. Muhammad was released in 2016, after 15 years of illegal captivity. In 2018, he married a lawyer from America. They had a son, but because of visa problems, they could not live together. Nancy Hollander pursued a career as a lawyer, as did her assistant, Terry. Koch left the army and went into law. At this point, neither the CIA, Defense Department, nor any other government agency has claimed responsibility for the mistreatment of the Guantanamo prisoners. Of the 779 people held there, only 8 have been convicted. 3 of them were acquitted on appeal. That will be all, gentlemen. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment and like it. See you soon.